Welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Jody Zarambi. Some of you may know me by my pen name, Jazzy Mitchell. I'm the moderator for today's question and answer session sponsored by Launch Point Press and Desert Palm Press. Now I am excited to spend time with two wonderful writers. Please welcome Judy Kerr
Hello. Thank you.
and Lee Sato.
Hello.
Thank you for being here today. Before we get to the question part of today's session, I'd love to listen to the projects that you have for us today. And it's exciting because both of you are having your books published in July, so they are available now for anyone to buy after they've listened to the excerpts and found the wonder in them. So we're going to have Lee come first. Lee, before you start your reading, please tell us what the story is about and set up the scene.
Okay. The story is about a female FBI agent named Jara, and she has been in love with a woman from a very powerful political family for years. They went to college together here in the Midwest in good old Notre Dame. And due to a tragic incident where Katerina's grandmother passes away, they come back together a little bit, kind of collide, and they reignite the love they have. And then Katerina, who is Jara's love interest, is set and determined that her grandmother, who we call Granny May, and you'll know why in a minute, is she believes that she was murdered. And because Granny May was a healthy, cantankerous old broad that just seemed like she would never die. What I'm going to read from, though, is from Granny's memorial. They do a graveside service later, but this is the memorial where all the family gets together. It's set in New England. The family is from Greenwich, Connecticut. Jara is actually living in Newport, Rhode Island, but is there at the house to help give support. The family planned a memorial service for Granny May for mid-October, and we postponed the DC trip. The memorial was held at the family estate on the grounds by the garden overlooking the water. Granny had loved October. The trees were turning, a briskness was in the air, and according to her, it was sweater weather, which made everyone look good. Of course, I followed Granny's wisdom and wore a sweater and black slacks. Katerina, on the other hand, wore a mid-length black velvet dress with long sleeves, a cinched waist, and pearls. Granny would have been pleased. One by one, the family trickled in, their footsteps echoing through the halls as they made their way to their respective rooms. First to arrive was CJ, his wife Julia, and their child Calvin. They entered with tired smiles, their journey from DC having taken its toll. With practiced efficiency, they unpacked their bags, settled in. CJ retreated to the den after unpacking, opened his laptop, and began working. Shortly after, Chase arrived with a new girlfriend, Abby, their laughter echoing through the foyer as they made their way upstairs. Katerina rolled her eyes as the fact that Chase had brought yet another girlfriend home. Chase and Abby disappeared into their room without a word, leaving a trail of scattered belongings in their wake. Chase was what people called a professional student. At nearly 30, he had yet to earn a degree at NYU. Though he had many majors, nothing seemed to keep his interest for long, including girlfriends. Chase made his way back downstairs and straight to the kitchen. His eyes lit up at the sight of the spread on the kitchen table, and without a second thought, he reached for a handful of food and a bottle of wine meant for the upcoming memorial. Removing the cork with a satisfying pop, and before taking a long swig straight from the bottle. Katerina and I had just entered the kitchen, and her expression darkened at the sight of her brother's self-indulgence. Chase, what are you doing? She scolded, her voice sharp with disapproval. That's meant for the memorial. Have some respect. Chase shrugged, his carefree demeanor unchanged. Relax, Kat, he replied. Hey, Jara, he said casually before taking another sip from the bottle. Katerina's eyes flared with anger, and I stepped back. You're acting like a pig, she snapped, her frustration bubbling into the surface. When are you going to grow up and start taking things seriously? We need help setting up the memorial. You mean like how much CJ is helping out? Mr. Serious in there can't step away from his precious laptop to help. So why are you bitching at just me? Chase replied sarcastically. As Katerina's frustration reached its boiling point, her voice cracked. Can't you see? She cried, her words echoing through the room. We're supposed to be here for each other, helping each other, not acting as if this is just another party. CJ emerged from the den, his brow furrowed. I'm sorry, he murmured, his voice soft with regret. I was just trying to get some work done before a deadline. Some people have jobs and responsibilities, he glared at Chase. Hey, I have responsibilities, Chase said as he put down the wine bottle. CJ rolled his eyes and huffed. Katerina, her eyes brimming with tears, shook her head. Stop it, both of you. It's not about work. It's CJ. It's about being present, about being here for each other when it matters most. I took Katerina's hand and coached her out of the kitchen. The last thing their mother needed was at this time was to hear her children fighting. We walked around the grounds, checking the tents that had been set up for the memorial, and made our way to the garden. We found a recently painted wrought iron bench in the shade, its stark white color contrasted against the colorful blooms and green ivy. Kat, let's just sit for a bit, away from the chaos, I urged, walking toward the bench. It's already been a long day, and it's just getting started. I leaned back, the surprising coolness of the metal feeling good against my back. Katerina rubbed her eyes again and sat beside me. I'm so angry right now. Can't my brothers think of anyone besides themselves? CJ, uber responsible, and Chase, well, the opposite. They drive me nuts. Kat, everyone deals with grief differently. Maybe this is how they handle it. Give them a break. Katerina yanked her hand from mine, turned to me with her piercing green eyes. Whose side are you on? I put up my hands in protest. Kat, please. I'm not on anyone's side. This isn't a battle. Be glad your brothers are here, even if they only show up for the memorial. Katerina heaved a long sigh. I didn't think losing Granny would be this hard. My nerves are shot and I'm exhausted. Maybe I'm letting them get to me a bit too much. She retook my hand and squeezed it. At least you're here. I brought her hand to my lips and kissed it softly. We sat quietly until we heard more people arriving. I guess we better get back, I said, starting to stand. Katerina pulled me back down. No, she whispered, let's just stay a little longer. Her eyes welled with tears. You know I was named after Granny May. I remembered Victoria mentioning this recently. Granny's full name was Ekaterina Anastasia Majowski Robinson. Mom has the middle name Anastasia, but I got the first. She smiled and her eyes sparkled. It wasn't until I was older that I dropped the E, but Granny was okay with that. She told me, you need to be your own person, but still have the best of me. I'm going to miss her so much. We sat for a little longer while Katerina wiped her eyes, stood up, and straightened out her dress. Okay, I'm ready. We walked back to the house and went through the French doors to the kitchen. Victoria and the boys were standing by the island. Victoria was crying and CJ had his arm around her. What happened? Katerina asked, looking from one to another. Chase answered first. Sorry, sis, about before. Katerina nodded and looked at her mother. Fine, but what's this? Oh, it's Dad being an ass, Chase replied. He came in, and instead of being supportive, the first thing out of his mouth was about the will. What a callous piece of Chase, Victoria scolded. He's your father. But he is, Mom, CJ shot back. He has always treated us like crap, like we were beneath him. And you know it. The only person he seemed to tolerate was Kat. Oh, please, Katerina hissed. Enough, Victoria yelled. We're not letting your father or anyone else ruin this memorial for Matka. Got it? She pulled away from CJ, blotted her eyes, and with a crumpled tissue stood up straight. We have guests, and we need to act accordingly. We all stood in silence, letting Victoria's words sink in. Granny would have been the first person to agree, even though she thought Charles was an ass too. A massive turnout came to pay their condolences. Granny May was much loved by her community, family, and friends. A picture of her and the family was placed on a long table on the back portico. Granny's favorite music played softly, and even though it was October, the garden was overflowing with fresh blooms, as if it were paying its respects too. Granny would have loved it. Maka always loved sitting out here, Victoria said in her eulogy, watching the sailboats come into the harbor. It was one of her favorite places. Her parents made sure that when they built this house, at almost every angle, you could see the water and the garden. Victoria wiped a tear. Maka said she helped work in this garden for as long as she remembered. Initially, it was for food, which was hard to come by during World War II, but her family made it work. Now it's a picturesque flower garden with species from all over the world. She wanted to remember where her family came from and all the other families that helped. Victoria told more stories and asked people present for their participation. More than 20 people stood and said something. Some of it was sad, but for the most part, they were funny. The overall feeling was how giving and warm hearted she was. The rest of the family also told a story or two about Granny. When they finished, I didn't think there was one dry eye, except for maybe Charles, who, of course, didn't speak.
That was great. Thank you, Lee. So just to repeat, that's your debut book, Hornet's Nest, which is book one in the Jara Quinn series. We're so excited to have that published through Launchpoint Press. And that was a great excerpt to give us so that we could get to know the family a bit and some of the dichotomy and tensions within the family while they're trying to honor Granny, who had just passed away. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
So, Judy, you're up next. You're going to read an excerpt from Postmark Castle Cove, which is an M.C. McCall novel of suspense, book three, out July 1st. Can't wait to hear this excerpt from you. Before you begin your reading, please tell us what the story is and set up the scene.
All right, thank you. Postmark Castle Cove is the third book in the MC McCall suspense series, featuring a female U.S. Postal Inspector. And MC is a person of high integrity, and she has a dry sense of humor, and she does not suffer fools. And she's also troubled. So, in other words, she's human, like, we all are. In book three, I'm going to read from the beginning, and that takes place just a couple months after the end of Silent Service, which is book two. And we're going to be with MC as she's getting ready to go into a doctor appointment to find out if she is going to be cleared to return to duty after being at an inpatient rehab program for alcohol addiction. Also, as part of that, there'll be a section that's kind of a recap of how book two ended, so that in case you hadn't read book two, you'll get a sense of where she was at. So, here we go. May Day was International Workers' Day. In MC McCall's life, May Day, May Day, May Day was more fitting because she was in a continual underlying state of distress. Sobriety should have given her clarity. Instead, on the morning of what might rank in the top 5 worst days of her life, Postal Inspector MC McCall sat in her car in a parking lot. The clinic in front of her, near the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport, was a 2-story tan smudge against the backdrop of the spring morning. The building set MC's nerves on edge. Was she about to face the death knell of a storied career? Should she shut off the engine and go inside? Stay? Go? Great. Now she'd have an earworm of the Clash's hit song. Snap out of it, McCall. What if the U.S. Postal Inspection Service designated doctor didn't clear her for return to duty? Did she want a chance hearing negative news? She drummed her fingers on the steering wheel of the Subaru her murdered life partner Barb had driven, contemplating the nondescript tan brick structure bathed in deceptively happy May sunshine. The interior of the car came to life, closing in around her. The air, thick and pulsating with strands of sunshine, pinned her in the driver's seat, as if holding her hostage. She closed her eyes, counted to 10, and opened them. No pulsation. The air thinned. Warm, bright rays enveloped her. She felt like an extra from a Twilight Zone episode. Sun sparked off the windshield, revealing a film of road grime. time to wash the car. MC could leave now and reschedule the doctor's appointment. Evasion was not the better part of valor, she reasoned. But did she care? No. Yes. Maybe. She swiveled the rearview mirror so she could see herself. One of the first things that she'd done after finishing rehab to prep for returning to the job was to get a haircut. Her spiky do showed more salt than pepper these days. Age, stress, maybe both. More wrinkles lined her forehead and around her eyes. And those eyes, the vibrant blue Barb had always said were a beacon of light, were now as washed out as a hot August sky. A reflection of her life, lackluster, dull. She had become the opposite of pre-sober MC. She considered whether the weekly AA meetings were beneficial. The LGBTQ specific group made her feel only slightly less ambivalent. The proclamation of one of the attendees at her first meeting had stuck with her. Cover your ass and don't worry about saving face. She couldn't pinpoint why that sentiment had embedded in her brain. Well, you aren't into the Serenity Prayer, so at least you had one takeaway. Perhaps illogically, Barb's voice tethered MC to the here and now in times of turmoil and indecision. More than 6 months had passed since Barb had been murdered, and MC still heard her. But right now, she needed to decide. Where was a magic 8-ball when she needed one? Easier to leave decision-making to chance. And chances were strong she'd pass the exam with flying colors. Then she could hit up the 5-8 club for a celebratory burger and beer. A beer. Nothing harder. Totally doable. Not like she'd be hitting the hard stuff. The goose had taken flight out of her life. Hadn't it? But she'd deserve a little pick-me-up to get her through the day and ready to face returning to the job on whatever date the good doc prescribed. So more than 6 weeks earlier, during one of the worst blizzards in years, MC had cast aside every vestige of defense and drunkenly shown up at her coworker Cam White's door in the middle of the night. She'd awoken the next morning on his couch, feeling like a wrecking ball had bashed her life into a smoldering pile of rubble. With nary a scintilla of memory of the previous night, she attempted to piece together how she'd landed on his doorstep and what had transpired after her arrival. She staggered to the kitchen. Her stomach heaved at the mere thought of coffee, so Cam's wife, Jane, prepped some tea for her. Cam proceeded to explain the previous evening's events in technicolor detail. I showed up without boots or shoes? MC twirled a tea bag and the steaming mug of water. No shoes, no gloves. MC, you were beyond sloshed. I was freaked out thinking you had alcohol poisoning. I was on the verge of calling 911, Cam said. I don't remember anything after my second drink at home. MC massaged her temples. I didn't wake up the kids, did I? The last thing she wanted to do was scare Jameson and Haley. No, the kids slept through it all. I don't doubt for a minute you don't remember anything. You had us both worried. But the important thing to remember is you asked me to drive you to a rehab place. Today. Cam gazed at her over the rim of his cup. I hope you haven't changed your mind in the bright light of day. Yes. I mean, no. I don't remember, guys. She peered at Jane, who now sat across the table next to Cam. I did? I said that? Jane reached for MC's hand. Yes, you did. I think you're brave and chose the best path for your survival. And I speak not only from the heart, but from experience. Cam rested his arm across Jane's shoulders. Right. Jane had gone through rehab, a recovering pothead after going down a dark and twisty path in college. Meeting Cam had changed her life in the nick of time. She'd gotten clean because getting married and having a family was important to them. No way would Cam commit unless Jane made the hard choice to get clean. Had MC's subconscious mind or the guiding spirit of Barb brought her to them at her lowest point last night? But it wasn't like Jane was the only person in her life who could understand MC's issues. Dara, had been one of her best friends, was a recovering alcoholic. Dara had been nagging MC for months to go to an AA meeting, had even offered to attend with her. Every time, MC had shut her down faster than a computer crashing during a power surge. Maybe because you knew deep down Dara was right, but she was too close. You know Jane, but there's 6 degrees of separation there. Enough, anyway, to cause you less angst in appealing for help. Barb's reasoning centered MC. But I wonder if I can do this on my own. She tried to stifle the voice of logic narrating in her head. Find, local AA meetings, go that route. Why was she backpedaling? MC ran a hand through her hair and realized she probably looked like death warmed over. That could work, right? Even to her own ears, the words sounded feeble, pathetic. MC, I think we all know the answer. Cam's voice was gentle but firm. Yeah. She took a tentative sip of the Earl Grey, a wisp of steam causing her eyes to water. Or was it something else? God, please don't let me break down. Cam's right. No denying that. Barb's words swirled as tears tracked down her cheeks. Yes, we do know the answer. MC swiped her hands across her face. Cam drove her home on that winter morning. He'd offered to stay while she placed the call to a rehab facility. MC declined, told him she wouldn't back out. MC, I'm married to an addict. If I leave you to your own devices, all bets are off. Trust me. You go take a shower and I'll make coffee. Then we'll make that call together. After a shower and with a pot of coffee in her system, MC, with Cam by her side, called Renewal Ridge Recovery, located in a bucolic suburb south of the cities. The website claimed the facility was LGBTQ friendly, which caught her attention. Once they determined her insurance would cover a good portion of the cost, MC was transferred to an intake coordinator. The person dug uncomfortably deep into MC's history and then informed her he'd send the information to the facility's clinical program team where they'd determine the appropriate level of care she'd need. Hang in there. Someone will contact you later today, he'd said. The chain of events led to Cam driving her to Renewal Ridge Recovery, where she entered the inpatient alcohol recovery program on, of all days, Friday, March 13th, 2015.
Thank you, Judy. I love Friday the 13th, so I would think that would be a good sign.
Yeah.
I really like that excerpt that you gave us, since it gives people who haven't read the other books in the series some place to land so they can understand what's going on, why MC is scrabbling here and trying to figure out what to do, whether or not to go to rehab, whether to just let herself go and keep going on that downward spiral. And I also really liked about this book how you have Barb's voice in her ear all the time. It's like her ego, or, just kind of telling her and reminding her of what Barb would say to her in the past.
Yep.
So
Yep.
thanks for sharing that. It was great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's get to the questions. I have so many questions for you today. Haha. So we'll see how many we get through. But the first one I wanted to ask was, what inspired the idea for the book, and how did you come up with the plots for both? So Lee, why don't you start us off with that?
This has been for no other word, labor of love for 25 plus years. I don't want to say labor as in it was bad. It was just a long time coming. Years ago, I had this recurring dream and it just wouldn't go away. And I dream like that. I have movies in my head or plots and things in my head. And I had a very long commute at the time between work. It was around a 90-mile round trip every day. And so instead of listening to the radio, I would write the rest of this dream slash book in my head, never thinking it would go anywhere or anything like that. It has changed quite a bit since the first dream in 2000, and I just started playing with it. I ended up leaving work in 2017, my career. After getting settled in, I decided to take this a little seriously. I've always loved New England. I fell in love with Rhode Island and I felt like I was home there. So I thought, well, let's set the dream there. And I've changed quite a bit through that. The initial idea came through a dream. At the time, I worked with a lot of law enforcement. I worked with FBI, medical examiners, the like. And so I started incorporating all of that. And then I added a partner in the writing, and it just took a life of its own once I did that. I tried to use the partner and her family as the initial family from my dream of a powerful political family. And the characters wrote themselves. I've always been intrigued by true crime, always wanted closure. One of the things I love is true crime stories because it has closure. In my career, I didn't get a lot of that. And so I
Mhm.
wanted to write a book that had a lot of love element, a lot of family element, and some true crime that could get some closure and justice with it.
Awesome. Thank you, Lee. How about you, Judy? How'd you get the idea for this book and how did you come up with the plot?
Well, in Silent Service, in book two, there was an investigation MC was involved in that book that involved a child that had died accidentally from an overdose of fentanyl. And that really hit her, being involved in an investigation where a child was a victim. And so when I started book three, I knew that she was going to have something to get her kind of back into the swing of things once she returned to duty. And so I figured, well, there's going to be just kind of a basic whatever investigation that they see a lot of mail theft or whatever. And in this case, I decided to use a post office robbery that happened out of the cities so that she would have to travel back up north. And then I thought, oh, I can turn this into something more, even more dark and really gripping if I add this element that is going to involve child exploitation. And a lot of people wouldn't think that. In fact, my editor did ask me, she's like, wait a minute, postal inspectors do investigation of child exploitation cases? No, that's FBI. I said,
No, it is.
yeah. And so I thought that it's kind of for me, I was looking at it like a slow burn reveal on how these child victims were affecting her and driving her. And so I came up with that idea. I did a lot of research on investigations of child exploitation locally here, and I have a resource at the Public Information Office for the Inspection Service in DC. He actually, earlier in his career, had been involved in child exploitation investigations and a giant sting operation out in New York back in, I can't remember, 1990 something or 80 something. I can't remember what he said. But it's like, okay, I can do this then and get her into that investigation and take it from there. And that's what I did.
All right. It lends itself to the next question, which is, what's the most unusual topic that you researched for this book?
Gee, I'd have to say it's child exploitation. Not really a topic I did much research on prior to coming up with the idea for this book. So, yeah,
Yeah, you're on the watch list now.
no doubt.
Yeah,
How about you, Lee?
definitely.
What's the most unusual topic that you researched for this book?
Well, there were two. One is how to kill someone and get away with it. No one should ever look at my search history, ever. In speaking with some FBI friends and things, and they're like, well, you need to do this and you want to do, I'm like, oh, I'm not going into all of that now. But I did speak to a lot of physicians and pharmacists and things. And once they found out that we aren't going to court, it is going to be in a book of fiction, then they relaxed. I mean, if you raised eyebrows, but then they were like, okay, you're not really trying to kill anyone, right? Right, definitely. I'm writing it down. So they were really good about it and very forthcoming. And that was good. The second one was researching where Katerina was going to live, where the Lansing family, this political power, would live. And I did a lot of research with the real estate sites, Zillow, and all of those. Made a lot of phone calls to real estate agents, disappointed a lot of them that I'm not buying their $30 million home, but they were good about it. And I found the perfect home and was able to use that and tweak it and do it the way I wanted it to do. But it, there's an honest house like that out there. So
Right.
it
So if
does
we win the
exist.
lottery,
It does
Yeah.
if we win the
exist.
lottery, we'll
So
go
if we
get
all
it.
can, yeah, pool our money, we can have that house.
Yeah, those multi-million-dollar homes sit for a long time
Yeah.
normally.
They rent them
Eh,
out mostly.
Right. You're on a search list too.
Oh,
So
I've been for quite a while.
yes. But I'm a writer.
But I'm a writer, honestly. Yeah, huh?
Judy, how much do you
Yeah.
rely on your readers' knowledge of previous books from the series, and to what extent do you recap or refer to past events in your book? I say this knowing that you just read an excerpt where you did recap many of the events from the last book, but go ahead.
Right. I try when I'm writing the book, I tried it my best to make it enough of a story that a person could read it as a standalone. But with that said, especially from book one to book two, there's a specific arc that starts in book one and is resolved in book two. You could read book two, but I think it's more impactful when you read the first book and then read the second and you see that arc
Yeah.
resolution in book two. I think it's much more
Mhm.
impactful. But again, I think my books could be read with just standalone. In book two and book three, there are places where I'll refer back to stuff that happened in the previous book or books. So, as a refresher, maybe for the reader, or just to give it context or whatever.
Right, so that the readers don't get lost when you refer to something that happened in the past. You give
Yep.
them those building blocks instead. Lee, while navigating the publishing process, what surprised you the most?
Um,
How awesome your publisher is,
oh,
or
definitely how awesome the publisher was, how fantastic my editor was. Yes,
yeah.
definitely all that. Actually, how much work goes into, I mean, getting the idea and the plot and actually writing it was the easy part.
Hmm.
Doing the editing and making it better upon each edit and each edit. I had sent it to an editor prior to ever sending it to you. And even that was quite cumbersome of, well, I wrote this. This is great. And well, yeah, it is, but and
Yeah.
so she called herself the Bobby Knight of editing, you know. She'd be really nice in coaching and then she'd throw a chair at me. And so it was really good because it really honed in on a lot of the things I needed to do. And I changed the entire second half of the book before you ever got it.
Right.
And then with the back and forth with the editing, you know, I thought I knew grammar. I guess not, where commas and things go. And the work that goes into the behind the scenes of getting the cover, getting the formatting, getting all of these things, you know, you just can't print it out on a computer, slap it between two covers and send it out there. And I think that
Yeah.
that's what's lost on so many self-publishers because they don't understand that going to a publisher, they're only making it your book better, what you're doing better, because your name's on it too, and you want something that is quality, and I want something quality. And so it took me a second to, this isn't personal. This is not, no slams involved. I,
No, yeah.
yeah,
We
and
only want to
just
help you.
yeah, we're just going to go through this and we're going to make this the best story it could possibly be. And that's
Yeah.
the length of time of doing that. I'm an impatient person. And so
Mm.
that was a little grueling for me, but understandably.
Yeah. That's a good perspective. There's no manuscript in the world that is perfect when it's submitted.
Never.
And that's one
All
of the
right.
things that authors need to understand. You can always make it better. Always.
Always.
It's
Always.
always something.
Yes.
I use editors and I use different editors for different things. Some editors are great with developmental editing,
Yeah.
which means that they help you flesh it out and really add details to the characters so that they're memorable. They don't sound like another character in the book, things like that. And you have the
Right.
technical editors, which is where all the grammar, punctuation, capitalization, word formation, word choice, all of that
Yes.
comes in. And
Yep.
most times an editor is not going to be good at both. And that's why we have
Right.
editing rounds, but then we also have proofreading and it's going to go through again. We try to get as many eyes on it as we can. And there's usually something that slips through. We know that. We try to see it all.
Yeah.
We ask the authors to look afterwards when you get to gallery, look at it again. What do we miss? Where's their missing period? Where's this? Where's that? It's just,
Right.
and some of my books, they had been published and then someone would write in saying, well, I found these errors, and we would end up having to add those later on. So there's
Right.
always something. I just read a
Yep.
book from a very well-known author, and she had a typo in it, and she had a missing period in another part. And I'm like, and you know how
Yeah.
many eyes must have seen that?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I've done the
Yeah,
same. I've read a couple that are well known, and it's like, oh wow, that got dropped.
yeah. So that's great that you know that. I think it makes it a lot easier if you understand the process and that it is going to take some time. And there's a lot going on behind the scenes that most authors don't know about
Yeah.
unless the curtain is pulled aside for you.
Well, we don't look behind the curtain. We don't want to look
Yeah,
behind
you
the curtain.
shouldn't because who knows what Oz is going to look like.
Exactly. Exactly.
So let me ask you both, how do you prepare for each book? And how much of your own past experiences do you incorporate into your book? Judy, why don't you start on that one?
Well, what I do a lot, especially when I'm looking at the types of investigations I might want MC to be involved in, is I'll go to the inspection service website and I'll read, they have a tab where they have like press releases and stuff like that, and then links to maybe the Department of Justice that might have a little bit more information. And so just to get an idea of the type of investigation I might want to try to put in the story. And then once I kind of make a decision or I have a couple of ideas, I have a resource. He's a retired postal inspector who lives down in Austin, Texas. And he's been phenomenal answering my 8 million questions throughout these 3 books. A lot of times when I ask him a question about a specific type of investigation, he'll come back with stories like, yeah, I did this, I had one like this. And so he'll tell me stories that he was involved in, and I can pull stuff out of there and use that in the book. I also have this other resource in the Public Information Office for the Inspection Service in DC. They don't usually put their names when you email the Public Information Office. It's usually the signature is, Public Information Office. That's all you get. But this guy actually put his name in the signature line. And so I've been, since then, been able to go just with him to the Public Information Office. And he's the one that I talked about earlier, where he'd been involved in a child exploitation sting investigation years and years ago, and legislation that came after that and stuff. He's been really great. And through him, I actually got an inspector. She's the assistant inspector in charge of governance or something now. But she had the job that he has right now in the Public Information Office when I was doing book 1. And when I was looking to get a speaker to come to Sisters in Crime, he recommended her. And at the time when I emailed her, I didn't realize that she had remembered me from
Mhm.
when I was researching for Black Friday. And she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I would be happy. I'm telling you guys, the inspection service is the most closed-mouth federal law enforcement agency in this country. It's like pulling teeth to get information out of them. I worked for the post office for 38 years. I knew inspectors.
Yeah.
So when I started writing Black Friday, I was really good friends with an inspector here in the Twin Cities. I worked with him in finance for years. And so I'm like, oh, he's going to be a great resource. And, I'd ask him questions. He would not talk to me. In fact, it got to a point where at work, this actually happened. I was walking down the hallway and he was walking toward me. He saw me and he did a 180 and walked the other way because he didn't want me to ask him questions.
Big question.
Hey, John, wait, I have a question. He, to this day, will not answer questions for me.
Oh, wow.
So it's just very strange. And I get they can't divulge certain investigative procedures and stuff like that. I get that. That's where I come in. I just make that up, right?
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's amazing the difference between some agencies and others.
Yeah, and how much information they'll reveal to you. Lee, how about you? How do you prepare for each book, and how much of your own past experiences do you incorporate into those books?
I've written the second one already, needs a lot of tweaking. I've also written the third, but it could be split into probably two or three different. It just kind of is like a word vomit right now. But the first one, I've had experience. I worked with crime against children for many, many years. And prior to that, 10 years in a psych, oh, not in a psych, but working for a psych hospital. And also then
You
in the
didn't break out? Is that what you're saying?
well, for
Thanks, thanks
whatever
for
reason,
clarifying that point.
I went in and they gave me keys instead of admitting me, and I didn't understand that, but I ran with it for 10 years. Um, I was crazier than them most of the time. And prior to that, I worked with the gangs in Chicago and Detroit for a couple years. So everything has been real interesting, and I've always been working with law enforcement in all sorts of different capacities. During this book, though, I worked with the FBI. I live in Indianapolis, and sex trafficking is huge in Indianapolis during the 500. We have all these sports teams here.
Mhm.
So I really got in close knit with a lot of FBI agents. When it came to asking about other things like political crime and financial crimes, they were like, oh, yeah, here it is. And they were very open. I was very pleased with that. And yeah, you might want to go to this office and talk to them about it. So, a lot of my experience, a lot of the people that I've known, and with the characters, no, I don't know any rich family that would own a $30 million home. But I do know of political people that abuse their power. So I took a little bit of that. The characters, their personalities are all people I know. And so as I was writing it, I would go, wait a minute, Katerina would not say this. And so I'd be like, this is how she would say it. This is how we would argue. I've been very fortunate of knowing fantastic medical examiners, some of the best doctors in the country through Riley and IU and community. I've been very fortunate of going through and trying to do the best I possibly could do to make it true, to the point that no names are involved to protect the guilty. So I try to do that as much as possible. And especially in the second one that I'm hoping to come out in a year or so, it's going to be, there was a lot more involved in that research wise than this one.
Yeah, looking forward to reading it. And Lee, while I have you, I wanted to ask you, what part of the work was the most fun to write for this book?
All the interactions, for one, but I absolutely fell in love with the character of Granny. I fell in love with her. She reminded me of my mother in the fact that my mom grew up through World War II. My mom was a very strong woman. There wasn't any sugarcoating involved. She had a sharp wit, and Granny was like the Betty White of just strong women. There was no sugarcoating. You just said it like it was, and you were unapologetic. She was very devoted and very protective of her family and did everything she could to protect them in all the ways she knew how. She was the most fun to write. She does pass away, but she is peppered throughout the entire book. And
Yeah, you don't forget about her, that's for
no,
sure.
you don't forget about this woman at all.
Judy, how about you? Which part of the work that you read from today was the most fun to write? Was there a fun part in
Oh my gosh, believe it or not.
there?
Um, one of the characters that I absolutely loved to write, and he showed up in book two and now a bigger role in book three, was Inspector Jim Bob O'Malley. He's a new inspector in the office. And actually, I had a much more in-depth storyline for him in this book, and that was one of the oh, kill my darlings. The editor said, you have so much going on. Something's got to go. And I thought to myself, it's going to have to be Jim Bob. And then the next message I got from her was, I think the Jim Bob. I'm like, yeah, okay. But I did keep him in. Jim Bob is a 6'5", red-haired Iowa farm boy, and he is just like the opposite of MC. I mean, he's young, he's raring to go, and he drives her crazy, drives her
Mm,
nuts. He is like, he's quirky. One of the things that he loves is he's obsessed with Columbo. I kept some of the storyline in. It was so fun to write him and the interactions between him. MC calls him Red, but she doesn't allow him to call her Chief or any other nickname. There's that playful interaction between them. And as much as he makes her insane, she can see in him the potential to be a really good postal inspector. And so at least she's recognizing that at the same time where she just wants to just wring his neck. But yeah, he was fun to
yeah.
write.
Judy, do you have an idea of how many books you want to have in this series?
Oh no.
Okay, I won't hold you to it. Don't worry.
No, I'm a pantser.
Mm,
And that goes to how many books is going to be in the series. I think what I'm kind of doing now is like, okay, if I think of something, like I thought something up for book three, I kind of have a little kernel of an idea for book four. So I think there will be a book four. I don't know.
mm. Okay, can't wait to find out. How about you, Lee? How many books are you envisioning for the series? Now you said
um,
three that you have so far. Is that
I
what it will be
have
or
well,
more?
I have the two. I have two written. The second one needs twerked. The third one, like I said, could probably be split into two, if not maybe three, depending on how we want to take it. Do we want to keep Jera and into the investigation scene of it all, or do we want to explore their love story and just have a standalone book? I don't know, but I could see this going for at least 4 to 5 with that
Nice.
series. There's other projects too. I hate to say a hard number because they have become
I'm
so
not gonna
much
hold you to it.
because they're so much part of my life. I think that
Mm,
I would miss them terribly if
Yeah.
I just
right.
stopped. I would extremely miss them all.
They have more to tell you and more for you to write
Oh,
down
a
on their
lot. They have a
behalf.
lot to say.
Yeah. I love when the characters talk to you.
Oh, they
Yeah.
do. Yeah. Now, it's not schizophrenia, is it? Okay.
No, no, no.
I
Okay.
don't think so. I think
Okay.
it's called being a writer.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I hear the voices too. It's good.
Yes.
So, Judy, now that you've had three books published, what have you learned that you wish you knew when preparing for your first book to be published? What can you tell other aspiring authors?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. I think one of the biggest mistakes I made when I was writing Black Friday, I mean, that book took me years to write. But I think the biggest lesson I learned with that book was I wrote chapter one and I just kept writing it. I wanted it to be perfect
Mm,
before I moved on. And I'm
Oh,
like, no, I can't, I will never finish this book.
mm-hmm.
And, I think what helps me a lot is I have a writing group. I have really good buddies and we can brainstorm with each other and we read each other's work and stuff. But it's just like you gotta get that whole draft down. I think that's part of the reason why it took me so long to write book one is because I kept doing that over and over and over. So don't do that, you know. And then once I got through it and got to the stage where it was going to be published, then I was like in a major panic, like, oh my God, it's going to be published. How do I get the word out? How do I market? So, I mean, there's that little bit of a nerve-wracking piece. I found what works best for me is, especially now in the summer, I do a lot of local festivals and events. Like I have one Saturday, there a bunch of authors. We're going to be at a coffee shop from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And it's going to be outside. We're going to set up our tables and we're going to sell our books. Stuff like that.
Nice.
I do bigger events. Like in July, I'll be out at the State Fairgrounds Education Building. I think there's 140, and that one is not just authors, but also independent bookstores. So we got a little competition there. But
Yeah.
doing things like that, it took me a while to figure out how do I find out about these things and how do I get involved. And I think, again, knowing other authors locally, that helps. Um, I joined the Sisters in Crime chapter here locally. You have to be a national member and then you can join your local chapter. And I'm on the board now for our chapter. So just those networking pieces and being in contact with other authors and finding out what they're doing. And that's how, like this one on Saturday, this coffee shop event, it's an author friend of mine. We were at Sisters in Crime and he's like, hey, what are you doing on the 21st? I'm like, why? What's up? And he's told me about this event. And so that's how I got involved in it. So
Nice.
That's nice. Yeah, networking definitely helps. We try and
definitely,
do
and
that
going
a
to
lot.
and try to go to GCLS. That,
Right,
for me, BoucherCon, I gone to BoucherCon too. That was helpful.
right. Yeah, yeah. There's some out there. You just gotta look for them. You gotta talk to other authors and see what they're going to. What are they doing?
Yeah.
How are they
Yeah.
helping themselves promote their works? Definitely. All right, I have a non-writing question for you. If you could transform into one animal at will throughout your life, what would it be
Oh,
and why?
oh
Lee.
God. Uh, I thought a lot about this and I probably overthought it way too much. I love animals. I love all kinds of animals. And there's so many cool things about all sorts of kinds of animals and what they do and everything. But I was in a mood the other day and I was sitting there with my partner. I said, I think I know what kind of animal I would transform into. And that would be a white male. And she looked at me and she goes, "What?" I'm like, "We're all animals. And what better animal to transform into than a white male and have all of this wonderful privilege and have the doors open and get behind the scenes stuff? See, being a LGBTQ woman and not having that accessibility and to be able to go into the all boys club and see, are they really just solving the world's problems or are they just talking about the scores of the game, you know? So I thought about it. That's the animal I would want to be. If I could just transform back and forth, it's kind of like what do women think kind of thing, the opposite of that. And so, yeah, I think that a white man.
Interesting,
Yeah,
interesting.
I know I overthought it, but yeah.
No, it's okay. That's a good one. Judy, what about you? What kind of animal would you want to turn into at will throughout your life if you
Oh,
could?
I did not put anywhere near the time into this that Lee did because, well, first of all, I'm not an animal person. I'll admit that outright. I am not an animal person. However, and you almost stumped the Judy on this one, but I think not an animal, but an insect. I would
Oh,
love
Ah,
to be a fly. I love to transform into a fly at will.
thought about that.
Because what's that phrase? If I
Fly
the
had
on the
fly on
only
the
wall.
been a
wall.
fly on the wall, think of all the
Mm,
conversations I could overhear, all the things I could see that happen behind these closed doors. That's fodder for books. Are you kidding
mhm.
me?
Yeah.
Totally.
And when you
Yeah.
think
They-
about it, you both have similar answers for the reason of
yes,
gaining information.
Gaining information, yes.
I know, right? I was
Yeah,
Both
talking to
having
my
that
fly and a
daughter.
ability.
white man, kind of
Yeah.
equal.
I was talking to my daughter about this too. I'm like, an animal. I don't, what animal? And
Yeah.
she's like, Mom, She had this whole thing. She goes, I've been thinking about this for years. And she
Oh,
had this
wow.
whole big thing for her. She goes, but my first one would be a mosquito. And I'm like, well, okay. Mine was a
Mm,
fly, yours is a mosquito. Why would yours be a mosquito? And she's like, you know, mosquitoes, I'm always the one getting bitten by mosquitoes. I don't know why. I'm covered from head to toe every summer in mosquito bites. And Ryan, her husband, has zero. And we're sitting
Mhm.
next to each other. She said, so I want to be a mosquito so that I can turn around and
bye,
shoot
everybody.
people, pay back. I'm like, okay, well,
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
um,
Yeah, I can understand that. I get bitten by mosquitoes too. All right. Well, we're just about out of time, so I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk about the book you read from one more time, or direct the listeners to a particular project that you're doing. Lee, what do you want us to know?
I'm just excited about getting this book out. I think people will enjoy it. Everyone that has read it so far has enjoyed it and are looking forward to more. I'm very excited about the second one that I'm working on and tweaking at. It's kind of like what Judy said. My first editor, Krista Hill, said, just don't worry about all the small stuff. Let me worry about the small stuff and just write it. Otherwise, you're going to get clogged, and just
mhm.
do it. And so I'm very excited about the second. It's a little bit darker than this first one. Yeah, it's going to be a dark one. And there's going to be a lot more twists and turns than even this one. So I'm very excited about that. I don't want to say too much about it other than it's going to involve two other kind of main characters involved, and crimes across state lines, and crimes that people thought were solved that weren't.
Nice.
And so trying to figure out all of the ins and outs of that. There will be a couple hot button topics in the second one regarding a transsexual and some situations that she is in, and some of the killings take place.
Mm.
So it's loosely based on a true story, but we'll go from there.
Well, that sounds
Awesome.
great. I'm looking forward to reading that. And yeah, you're going to stay on that watch list. So cool.
Yeah. Oh, I got on the watch list years ago with a situation, so I'm comfortable with it.
All right, cool. Judy, what is the last information that you want to give us today, either about the book you read from today or a future project that you're working on?
On Postmark Castle Cove, it was really hard to write this one because of personal things going on in my life, but it was a harder, more maybe darker, investigative kind of thing. I got myself in this headspace where I'm like, is MC believable as this postal inspector investigating this child exploitation situation? I mean, we're writing fiction, I know that, but I want it to be as believable as possible. And I think back because on the first two books, I had a retired chief deputy sheriff from Northern County bought my first two books. And I thought, oh God.
Mm,
First of all, white guy, retired law enforcement. How's he going to deal with this lesbian main character in law enforcement? But he actually sent me a message after he read both books and complimented me on my writing, first of all, and on the thoroughness of my showing the investigations. So I'm like, okay.
nice.
Yeah, that was like, wow, okay.
That's the best. When you get good feedback about something
Yes.
you've written, it shows that you did your research and you made it believable.
For this one, I did a little thing, something a little different. I don't normally engage beta readers other
Mhm.
than my writing group, but because I had this contact at the Public Information Office in DC, I asked him if he wouldn't mind beta reading the book. He
Mhm.
did, and his feedback was really good. He's like, he and he had read after my first interaction with him via email doing research. He bought both of the first two books and read them, and he really likes this character, and
Good.
he really likes MC. And so when he did the beta read for book three, he's like, "Yeah, you, this is good." So I'm like,
Good.
"Okay, well, at least one person likes it."
More than one, Judy, more than one. Don't you
Yeah.
worry. Well, I'm sorry to say that our session time has run its course, so we do have to wrap this up. I want to thank both of you for being here today, Lee and Judy. Congratulations on the release of your books. I hope people will check them out and leave good reviews for you, because we work so hard to write these and it's like a void. So we want that positive feedback whenever we can get it. These sessions are brought to you through Launch Point Press and Desert Palm Press. Please check out the websites and check out our authors when you have a chance. Be on the lookout for a new session, which will occur probably in September. So thank you for being here today, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you, Jody.
Thank you, Jody.
You're welcome.